Well, hi, I'm Dr. Dan LaPerriere. I'm the owner of Colorado Concierge Functional Medicine, and I'm here with Chris, who's one of my ReCODE clients. Hey, Chris, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Dan. It's good to see you.
Well, good. Good to see you too. Well, thanks for taking the time and talking to me. Um,
Pleasure.
yeah, Chris and I have been working together for 4 years now, if you can believe it. Started back in June of 2018. And Chris, you've been really dedicated to the ReCODE program and lifestyle during that time. So, um, one thing I wanted to do was take a little time and talk so we can learn about your journey a bit. And the hope would be that others can learn from the success that you've had, know it's possible to live a healthy and active lifestyle while doing the ReCODE protocol, and to inspire people to get started with ReCODE early on in the process. So, so to start, I'd love if you can tell us just a little bit about yourself.
Well, I live at 10,000 feet. I live in Colorado, and I'm a semi-retired entrepreneur. Um, I've been heavily involved in volunteer activities. I've been heavily involved in the Boy Scouts,
Right.
and uh, uh, really enjoy a very active lifestyle. So, for instance, in the wintertime, I'm usually in the back country backpacking or skinning with friends. Um, we call it hut to hut skiing. And then in the summers, we hike and bike and climb mountains. So it's a pretty active lifestyle.
Yeah, I always get a bit jealous of all the trips that you and your wife do. So, um,
Well,
yeah,
you know what Tina and I did several years ago is we set up a set of goals, and we love traveling internationally. So to give you a feel for it, we bicycled in different parts of the United States. We bicycle in Europe, and then in the wintertime, my friends and I will go backcountry skiing, and we've been to Switzerland, Canada, Colorado. Tina and I just got back from Norway, so it's a cool lifestyle.
well, what led you to kind of seek out Dr. Bredesen's program or the ReCODE program? As I think it was at that time, it was still the beginning of the ReCODE program, I believe. So, what sought you to kind of find that?
I think I'm one of the early adopters. So, kind of the backstory is that my mother died of dementia, and of course, there's this genetic component, and you're saying to yourself, "Oh my gosh, I wonder if I've inherited some of that stuff." So there was that kind of going on in the back of my mind, and then Tina and our kids both noticed that I was getting a little more absent-minded, and I wasn't quite as sharp, and maybe they have to repeat a question or so. And so Tina brought that to my attention. And also, kind of all about that time, a book came out by Dr. Bredesen called The End of Alzheimer. So, dementia and Alzheimer's are not synonymous, but they're extremely closely related. So I listened to the book on Audible and got excited about it because in the past, when people have talked about dementia or Alzheimer's, basically it's been described as a curse.
Right.
Gosh, I'm really sorry you have this problem. My heart goes out to you, but there's nothing we can do.
Nothing you can do.
And I just don't believe that. So when Dr. Bredesen came out with the End of Alzheimer's book, I read it, I listened to it, and I went, well, this makes a lot of sense because I'm actually married to a chiropractor who's extreme. Teen is extremely interested in wellness, and so uh, the concepts that Dr. Bredesen had talked about resonated. They made a lot of sense, and so I started looking into the protocol. And it became really clear that having a professional help me with the protocol would just be a really, really smart move. There's a lot of moving pieces, and we can talk about the protocol some more if you like. But that's really kind of got me there, and it's been extraordinarily helpful on a lot of levels. And we can talk more about that if you'd like.
So, in the beginning, were you personally aware of any of these changes, or it was more really your wife and kids who noticed it, Chris?
I think I was aware of some of it, and of course, you don't want to think that you've got a problem.
Right.
And But really, it was Tina really gets credit for this. I mean, I married an extraordinary woman, and as you know
I
Tina.
do know.
And so it was the combination of things. And when someone presents me with a problem, I'm kind of a fixer. Um, and so I started doing tons of research, and then again the planets aligned, and Dr. Bredesen's book came out, and I actually slogged my way through it, and it's a good read.
Yeah.
There's lighter reads that people can have, but the End of Alzheimer's was inspirational.
Have you have you personally, so you've been doing this for 4 years now, so have you personally noticed any changes, or have your wife and kids noticed changes from the work that you've done?
Um, I feel sharper. I feel better organized. I've always been pretty on point. Um, and I mean, you could even comment on that, Dan,
Yeah.
because you worked with me for 4 years. But Tina says it's made a huge difference. I mean, if Tina was here, she'd be saying, "Heck yes, big difference."
Hmm.
And I think the kids would agree with that also. So, from a third party perspective, I think the answer is a resounding yes. It's been
Yeah.
very, very helpful.
Yeah. So subjectively, from sort of outside evidence and some of your own feelings, you've noticed some benefits. How about on things like when you started to now, in terms of any of the testing maybe you've done, like the CNS vital signs scores, or other things like the brain games, like the Brain HQ? Have you noticed?
So, yeah. So, one of the things that's very helpful. So, again, I've got a different perspective. When I jumped into the Bredesen protocol, they only had one protocol that was called their ReCODE protocol. And they didn't have a pre-code at the time. Today, if I was to jump in, they'd probably put me on pre-code. Pre-code is short for a preventive protocol.
Right.
ReCODE is short for recovery protocol. So I wasn't really in recovery, but they've come up with this thing called the Bredesen 7. And
Hmm.
part of that is constant testing and training, which really appealed to me because I'm one of those guys that wants to know, well, how do you know you're making any progress? I mean,
Right. Right.
really? I'm not interested in just pouring time, energy, and money down a hole. And so there are several ways of doing that. And they've got this thing called the CNS vital signs tests, and mine have improved, which is really, really heartening. They've also got this thing called the Brain HQ, which is a series of mental acuity training tests. And those have been fun. Those have actually been a lot of fun. They're games.
Yeah.
And I've been in like the 91st percentile for the past couple of years. Um, I mean, I've done all the games. I kind of wish they'd come up with some new games
Hmm.
because I like new stuff. But yeah, yeah, I've done well on the tests.
Great, great. That's wonderful. And some of the other great thing about, the ReCode program that I found as a provider is, really by doing the program, you really are taking care of not just the brain, but really the whole body, and promoting a it's really a system of wellness, right? By really optimizing all of these vitamin and nutrient levels, decreasing inflammation in the body, improving nutrition and exercise, getting better sleep, managing stress. All of these things are things that are really
Right.
improving your longevity. And we've talked about that, I think, as well, as something that really spoke to you and Tina too, as part of what you recognize in the program.
Well, yeah. So now I'm going to get on my own personal soapbox. I am extremely frustrated with the current medical system in the United States. I spent 30 years in the employee benefits business, and we have a sickness system. We do not have a wellness
Very
system in
true.
the United States. And so, I mean, none of us gets out of this gig alive at the end of the day, right? But I'm not interested in a long, slow slide into decrepitude. I like being active. I'm 66 years old, and I'm very, very active. Um, so the trick to all that is being healthy. And so that's actually it was sort of interesting when I got into the protocol. I mean, for about 5 seconds, I had this idea, well, gosh, I'll manage this protocol by myself because, hey, it's all in the book. After that delusion passed, I realized I needed to find a practitioner. Well, the good news is, um, Apollo Health, the Bredesen people, they've got a list of practitioners, right? All the way from chiropractors to physical therapists I mean, they got it to medical doctors. And there's a lot of choices. And right off the bat, I knew that I wanted to have a medical doctor that was a functional medicine doctor
Mhm.
who focuses on wellness so that we don't have to, we want health optimization. We're not just interested in being fixed if we get sick. And so that's one of the things that drew me to you. Not only are you a medical doctor, but you're a functional medicine doctor, and you're actually pretty passionate about it. So that was really helpful to me. And uh, I mean, we're pretty focused on trying to be as active as possible as long as we can. I mean, we talk about two stages of our life: the active stage, which we hope will last for another 10 years. That would get us to 76. And then we think the next stage will be semi active,
Yeah.
which we think will last at least another 15 years after that.
Mhm.
So, but a lot of that has to do with, wellness and really just focusing on the basics.
Yeah.
And anyway, I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah,
Anyway,
no,
Dan,
yeah,
that's what
definitely.
attracted us to you. Not only are you in Colorado and you're in Boulder, and Colorado is full of really active people. You're personally active. You get interested in this stuff. So
Yeah.
it's fun having these conversations with you about, how do we optimize things.
Right. Right. And I'm always learning from all of my clients. There's so much information out there to really consume nowadays that every day I'm getting sent different articles and jumping on different Zoom calls with people like yourself who are challenging me too. And so this is a I continue to grow every day and learn more to bring to others and help them, which I really
You got
excites
the
me.
you get yeah, you've got the patience of Job because we are constantly asking you
There's
questions.
lots
Well,
of
Dan,
questions.
you read about this. What do you think about that?
Right.
So,
Right.
and I just, you just don't get that with a um, more traditional doctor. I mean, you get to see them for what, half an hour once a year,
Right.
and then they're kind of going through the list, and then bless their hearts, they're on to the next patient. Boom, and it's
Yeah.
not useful.
Yeah, definitely not useful for really promoting wellness. So when you look at all of the things in the Bredesen program and you read Dr. Bredesen's book, it definitely can seem overwhelming. There are a lot of things that you need to
Right.
do for, and part of it depends on where you're starting out as your lifestyle. But there, even if you're a healthy person, there are still a lot of things to really dial in and change and to adapt to. And so
Right.
how did you how did you organize this, or how did you approach this to make it to get the success that you've had?
Well, I think that's exactly right. This whole thing can be overwhelming, but you need to do all of it in order to be effective. So what I found was extremely useful, and we can talk about the shortcuts we took. But Apollo Health developed this thing called the Bredesen Seven, and one of those, and we can actually talk about some of those.
Yeah.
But the Bredesen Seven are what? They're nutrition, exercise, sleep, stress, stimulation, detox, and supplements. And following through on that was really, really helpful. And then the reports you get out of Apollo Health are really helpful. And then having a guide to kind of help you sort through all that, that would be you, Dan, is really, really helpful.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. Well, let's talk about each of those a little bit. So, because each one, of course, has some of its own challenges and has different things that we can utilize to help
Right.
our success. So
Right.
when we talk about nutrition and the keto-flex 12-3 program,
Right.
how was that for you to sort of approach and start incorporating? And were there certain challenges that you had with that?
Well, the concept of the keto flex 12-3 was really good for me. So we regularly, and for those of you that don't know it, it's you fast for 12 hours and you don't eat anything for 3 hours before you go to sleep.
Right.
So typically we'll have a meal around between 5 and 6, and then we won't have a meal again the next day until, I don't know, 10 or 11, maybe even to noon. And what that does is it raises your ketone level. So one of the tools that we use that again is incorporated into the Bredesen 7 Apollo Health system is a tool called a biosense. And it's a breathing thing. You just breathe into the deal and it actually gives you an indication as to how your ketosis levels are going. And that was extremely helpful. That's a cute little, that's a great little gift. That's
Yeah.
a great.
Yeah, it's a great device. And, because the alternative is, which can provide other information for sure, but is kind of, poking your finger and using blood as another way to get some ketone readings, but definitely something
Yeah,
that's,
we started out with the
yeah,
blood sticking thing, and we got real tired of it real
yeah,
quick.
yeah, definitely something you don't want to do multiple times a day to really
Right.
track things to see how you're doing. So the biosense is really, really a great tool there. Yeah.
We also got involved with a thing called the Zoe Project, and it's out of Great Britain. And this was not recommended by Apollo Health, but we used it and found it extraordinarily useful. For $300, they send you a box, and you then go through a series of experiments, blood. They also send them a sample of your poop, and what they do is they send you back a report on blood glucose, blood fats, and your gut bio. And then it teaches you how to make better choices at the supermarket. You actually on your cell phone, you could be scanning things in the supermarket, and you can say, well, that item doesn't do well for me. And it's all personalized
Yeah.
because my Zoe scores are different than say someone else's Zoe scores. So that was really interesting, really on the nutrition side.
Yeah, that was a cool tool that both of you, that you and Tina brought to my attention too. So that's
Oh, it's great. It's great.
yeah. Well, good. So there's the nutrition part, and I mean yourself. So we have exercise, and of course, for exercise, we know that's important because it strengthens our bones. But in terms of our brain and our muscles, but in terms of our brains, it helps raise certain chemicals in our body, like brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which helps nerve cells to grow and to establish new connections. Um,
Right.
and you yourself, as we've talked, you're a very active guy. So incorporating exercise into your life was not something you had to necessarily change, but um,
No, but I will tell you, Dan, it's real interesting. At one point, you asked me, God, Chris, are there times that you feel a little less sharp? And what do you do to kind of bring exercise is a big piece of that. So if
yeah,
I go out there and let's just say I'm doing a long bike ride, I come back, I just feel really, really sharp.
yeah,
Or backcountry ski or climb a mountain or do some hiking or whatever. Actually sitting down for long periods of time, it's not good for me.
yeah.
So yeah, the
You
exercise is
definitely
big.
notice. And we could also take a little divergence there and say that something else that may be really, really beneficial there is connecting with nature, right? Because that's something that we don't do lots of times, but in the activities you do, you're doing a lot
Oh,
outside in
it
fresh air. And I think that does a lot for the brain and body.
absolutely,
So
absolutely, 100%,
yeah.
absolutely.
How about sleep? Is sleep something you've had a personal struggle with, or is that something that you've worked on and improved as
Well,
gone through this?
I've been blessed with not having real sleep problems, but Tina did, and so she actually did a lot of research, and I got to be the beneficiary of that. And our show, a couple of quick little things that really worked well because I now get between 7 and 8 hours of really good sleep every night, and I used to think that 6 hours was just fine, but that was obviously silly. But we use something called the Aura Ring,
Hmm.
and it's think of it as a heart chest strap, only it's on your ring, and it measures your sleep quality. It also gives you a readiness score, and it gives you an activity score, but it also measures your sleep quality: deep sleep, light sleep, REM sleep. And boy, has that been interesting? Really, really interesting. The other thing that I do, which I thought was silly when I first heard about it, was nasal breathing. So there's a great book called Breath by Patrick McEwen, who everybody should
I think that
read.
was James Nestor was that one, I think. Was it?
Excuse me, James
Yeah.
Nestor. Patrick McEwen's the guy that did the research. Yeah, you're
Right.
exactly
Right.
you're
Yes.
exactly right. So I read the book, got interested in it. Of course, I read it because Tina told me to read it. And so at night, what I do is I actually sleep with tape over my mouth. And so I do really good, I do constant nasal breathing at sleep. I don't snore. And I'm telling you that you can actually look at my Aura Ring reports and you can see the improved quality of my sleep. So it's
Interesting.
pretty interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Cool. Um, and what about stress and what things? I mean, what things do you do to manage stress and to try and keep your mind and mind calm?
Well, as you know, I'm a big meditator.
Yeah.
I've had a daily meditation practice for years. Um, and, every morning, it's just one of the things that it's like brushing your teeth. You just do it. And so that has been really good. I also work really hard at staying personally organized. And I try to have days that I'll set aside days that are just my office days to do all that. And then the rest of my time is being outdoors. So we really work hard at lowering our stress. And I've got special apps that I use to help me stay organized. But I'd say meditation is a big piece of it. And there's different levels of meditation.
Mhm.
Um, for people that have never done it before, it can be extremely simple and basic.
Right, because that
For
can be an
metro,
intimidating thing for sure. Like, I don't meditate. I don't know how to do that.
well, the reality is people have been meditating in many cases. They just don't know that they were
Right.
meditating.
Right.
But it doesn't have to be a big deal. Now, for people who've been doing it for years and years and years, we're on to other things with meditation. But meditation is extraordinary.
Yeah. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay. And then how about brain stimulation? What sort of tools are you using there to kind of keep your
So
brain
there's a
engaged?
there's a really cool tool that the Apollo Health Bredesen people uh, have formed a relationship with called Brain HQ. And I was actually extremely skeptical when I first heard about this to start with. But essentially, it's a series of computer brain games that you can play, and there's a lot of them. And I was not enthusiastic because I was going, great, another form of Sudoku. Who needs that? But actually, there's a lot of science behind Brain HQ, and it is not just Sudoku. There's a lot of different varieties of things to do, and it's fun. I've been doing it for 4 years, and I've been in the 91st percentile for men my age for the past couple of years, and it's been helpful. It's been fun, and I think it's definitely made a difference.
Yeah. Well, that's great. It's a way to challenge the brain in different ways. Make sure we're using all those different pathways to keep those nerve pathways
Well,
open and nourished.
right, right. So there's different subcategories, and
Right.
so anyway, now I recommend it. Even if someone doesn't sign up for working with Apollo Health or with a practitioner such as yourself, they should go sign up for Brain HQ.
Yeah.
It's inexpensive and it's fun and it's effective.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. All right. And detox. So is detox something you've needed to really incorporate into? Is that something you had some big issues with, or not so much, but found some benefits from focusing in that area?
We're really lucky. We live at 10,000 feet, so we're kind of near the sources. The water up here is pretty clean. The air up here is pretty clean.
Yeah.
So I didn't think it was a big deal, but then as it turns out, radon is a big deal up here.
Mhm.
So because we live in a community that was one of the main mining centers of the United States, and so we've done a lot of stuff on detox. You can really disappear down the rabbit hole on detox. So Dan, you actually came up with several recommendations, tests. You kind of helped us through that maze,
Right.
which is very, very helpful.
Yeah.
But detox is a big deal. I mean,
Yeah.
you need to kind of clean up your environment around you. No
Right. Something
question.
important for everybody. And of course, like you mentioned, you can definitely focus in more and do some more advanced testing to really narrow in and be able to figure out the best personal ways or things that you need to really detox personally.
That's exactly right. So I'm a big hot chocolate drinker. That's my guilty sin. I love a really great cup of hot chocolate.
Mhm.
I hardly ever drink alcohol. I don't do a lot of other stuff, but I do like my hot chocolate. Well, as it turns out, cadmium is an issue in hot chocolate. So, and so I've actually invented a whole new recipe around hot chocolate using some of the sources that I've gotten from Bredesen and from you.
Right.
And so I've got Chris's hot chocolate recipe.
Nice.
And but again, it's all about detox and enjoying life without having to worry about these environmental poisons that are out there.
Nice.
It's interesting.
Yeah. All right. And last but not least, we have supplements, and that can be, those can be a lot of things to take, and of course can be a fair expense as well, but are a really important part of helping to really optimize what's going on in an individual. What's your experience with supplements been through this?
Well, boy, you're exactly right. This can just be overwhelming. So, um, the way we do it is, first of all, you have me do a series of blood tests several times a year.
Right.
And then you plot all these out on a spreadsheet, which has been extraordinarily helpful. And then you actually color code the spreadsheet, which which I love. And so we're able to then sort of fine tune because we're interested in health optimization. We're not just interested in trying to kind of climb back up to normal. We're interested in actually operating at a very, 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 very high level. And so when I'm low on something, you will say to me, Chris, this is what I think we should do. And what that boils down to is a lot of freaking pills, and you got to keep the thing organized. And so what we do is, I actually remember calling you one time saying, Dan, I'm going on a long bike trip to Europe, and I am not going to take 24 pills a day. I'm
Right.
just not going
Right.
to do it. And you said, well, okay, let's optimize all this. So you got it down, and actually my scores improved after that one. That was an interesting
That
deal.
was interesting. I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it was interesting, but you got to keep all that stuff organized. And but having someone who can help you look at the lab results, look at the trends, and then help with some specificity make suggestions on what supplements to take, and then how often to take them, and then that's a big deal. And then you have a special deal through full script, and you were able to pass on some savings to us, which
Right.
we really appreciate because
Yeah. Yeah.
supplements can get kind of pricey after a
I
while.
can. I can. Well, wonderful. All right. Well, thanks for sharing your experience with the Bradenson 7 there.
You
Lots of
bet.
useful tidbits there. So, um, thanks again.
The other thing that's kind of struck me, Dan, is this whole concept of neuroplasticity. And it used to be that the the belief was that the brain you're born with is the brain that you have, and those are the cards you're dealt. That's
Right.
it,
You lose brain cells, they're gone, right?
and they're
So,
gone. That's
right.
right. And it turns out that is not true. And the brain can rewire. The brain can be healthy. Um, I think that Dr. Bredesen uses a really interesting analogy when it comes to Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's is like a roof with, I think he said, 32 holes in it. You got to plug each hole. You can't just plug one or two holes. And that really makes a lot of sense.
Mhm.
So um, and so this Bredesen Apollo Health stuff is not only good for your mental acuity, but it really aligns well with an active lifestyle. So we climb mountains in Colorado. I've climbed 57 of the 58 14ers, and mountains that are
There you
over
go.
14,000 feet tall, and I'm still doing it. So really having a system in place with someone who can kind of help save you a lot of time, right, will then give you the tools that you need to stay active.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. Well, thanks so much for sharing some of your story with us here today, Chris. and I look forward to continuing to our work together. Um, and hope you have a great
It's
rest of your
been
day
fun,
today.
Dan. We're gonna do it for quite a while.
All
Take
right.
care.